Democrats stole the election and Republicans covered it up. The worst roadblocks came from Republicans.
There's a lot of patriots out there who are fighting this, but you also said you can blame a lot of lazy, fat Republicans. Now, I want you to name some names. Nothing, to me, represents how screwed up this country is than the last election. And it took the wind out of my sail. I don't want to be that cynic because I'm not voting anymore.
Right.
Because people used to say that to me and laugh. My liberal jerk friends used to laugh. I'll tell you, Brett Butler. I don't know if you remember a show called Grace Under Fire. Do you remember that show?
I do, actually, yeah.
On ABC. I was a good friend of hers. I remember back, that was a G.W. Bush election or something, and we were talking about it, and she laughed at the table at me. She goes, he thinks his vote matters. And I go, what are you talking about? She goes, they don't count your votes. So I'm like, yeah. Ever since she said that, and I hear from other, please tell me my vote still counts. Obviously you wrote the book.
Right.
And
Yes, absolutely. It's more important than ever that people not just get out and vote, but volunteer. We have to work the polls. I mean, I was overwhelmed by the number of Republican poll workers that I interviewed that said they were outnumbered 10 to 1, 20 to 1. In some cases in Detroit, I had 3 people tell me they were outnumbered 100 to 1. Every Republican volunteer, there were 100 Democrat volunteers. Well, so yes, there are problems, and yes, there's, we saw illegal activity and all of that. But at the end of the day, if we're not showing up to actually work the polls and we're voluntarily allowing them to work the polls and count the votes, I don't think we can really complain much. We have to show up and participate.
That's my worst nightmare, my niece working the poll. Anyway, that was a strip club joke, Dallas. So what happened in Maricopa County? I mean, I was following it, and I got to be honest, and I just abandoned it. I was seeing Carrie Lake online giving these updates. They were all positive. She's like, we're ahead now, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, it just all went away. They're like, no. I mean, can you give us a little insight to what?
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw a repeat of 2020. They needed, I think, 6 extra days to find more ballots and count the votes. And it was very disturbing. I think Carrie Lake, I believe Carrie Lake won that race. I also believe that she proved she met her burden to win the lawsuit challenging it. But the judge, of course, didn't side with her. And then later this week, I think February 1st, the Court of Appeals takes up her case. We'll see what they do with it. But I think she has more than won every step of the way. And we're unfortunately seeing fear and cowardice at best playing out among our court system. And no one wants to be the one to stand up and say, yeah, we actually have a real problem here. I mean, the burden of proof or the standard in Arizona to overturn an election or just disqualify, it's not even overturning the election, it's just disqualifying one county or disqualifying a set of votes, is that it's uncertain, meaning you can't tell the exact number of votes that should have counted or, should have been included. And she had whistleblowers from the ballot of the ballot company saying that close to 300,000 votes had been illegally inserted into the tally. There were, 25,000 mismatched signatures that shouldn't have been counted. I mean, she came close to, it was around 500,000 votes with legitimate, provable information showing that they should not have been added to the tally, rendering the tally uncertain, meaning she meets her burden of proof. She had expert witnesses, she had on-site whistleblowers, and not only that, but the election director for Maricopa County perjured himself. He lied under oath and got caught and then basically had to acknowledge that he lied under oath. So I think she more than proved her case, yet the court has refused to side with her thus far. I'm still holding out hope. We'll see what the Court of Appeals does.
That doesn't discourage you. Thank God you're not. I mean, you're an optimist. When she does all that work and meets the burden of proof, but like you said, it's at the judicial level.
Yeah.
Even when Trump, right after the election, people on the left, my friends, are like, no, the judges said no, that there was no, they didn't say no, they didn't even look at it. They just ruled it out.
That's exactly right.
Right?
They refused across the board to look at it. Every case was kicked out on standing or mootness or a timing procedural issue. Carrie Lake's case, actually, to my knowledge, was the first one since the whole 2020 debacle where anybody actually got to present evidence in court. As far as I know, I believe Carrie Lake's was the first one that actually happened.
We're talking to Christina Bobb. She's got a great book out, Stealing Your Vote. She's a lawyer for former President Donald Trump. What the whole they labeled it a big lie. That like to say the cover-up's worse than the crime. That's all it takes when you own the media, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Tell them they're
exactly right. The cover-up is much more frustrating than the crime. And I was frustrated because the way that I like to summarize it is that Democrats stole the election and Republicans covered it up. And it was so disheartening and frustrating to see the Republican cover-up in Arizona, in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Georgia. I mean, you name a state, and Republicans were running interference from anybody trying to run a meaningful investigation, whether it was an elected official who wanted to do some sort of official investigation, or whether it was a citizen voter who had sued and was looking for access to certain information, or whether it was a grassroots effort that had done their own canvass. Whatever it was, the worst roadblocks came from Republicans.
Yeah, you mentioned, there's a lot of patriots out there who are fighting this, but you also said you can blame a lot of lazy, fat Republicans. I want you to name some names.